Hi, welcome to the second draft. I wish I was coming on here a little bit more excited about doing my first video, but life is just lifing right now. Unfortunately, I'm just not in a place where I can say things have happened, it's the past, this is what I've experienced, because it's still happening, some of it anyway. So if you're listening, keep what resonates, leave what doesn't, and let's get into it. I've called this platform the second draft because I feel like life doesn't necessarily go the way you've planned it the first time. We're all trying to rewrite parts of ourselves that exist outside of life scripts, traumas, experiences we've inherited, trying to utilize them or even go beyond them to write a version of ourselves that actually works for us. But there is one thing I've been thinking about for a while myself because I'm experiencing it firsthand. Where does everything go when you don't express it? For a long time now, I've been getting this feeling like I'm on the verge of imploding. I didn't quite understand what that meant, even for myself. I would get this urge to want to say certain things, express certain things in situations and environments, but I will just suppress myself and not say anything at all. That is how I've grown up, and these are the things I have learned living in a South Asian household. That is probably what a lot of South Asian girls have seen around them, from their mothers to their sisters to their cousins, just all trying to keep the peace, all trying to appease, all trying to prevent conflict and be considered or labeled as good. So I've always fit that character. I've played it really well, I would say. So much so that I would say I've brought it into my adulthood, and I've continued to do that, and I'm still continuing to do that. But somewhere along the line, I started to get this uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach. Like I want to say something, like I want to do something, but I'm not able to. And what was holding me back was what people thought of me, how they valued me, how they saw me. Because I didn't value myself and I didn't see my self-worth outside of the lens of other people. And I think a lot of South Asian women feel that way. It's not like my implosion has been evident to anyone. No one else has really saw any changes in me because I'm functioning so well despite it. I work, I save up, I support family as much as I can financially, emotionally. I support whatever relationship I'm in. I try to be there for other people, even at the expense of myself. And I think I do pretty well with all those things. So you couldn't really see that there was something missing in all of this. Eventually, I realized that functioning doesn't mean that you're okay. They're not the same thing. Some people emulate strength because they had no other option. That's what I felt like I needed to do. I didn't think there was any other option, so I had to be strong for my family, who would pick up the remnants of the trauma left behind by everything we had experienced. We would plaster a fake smile just to get everyone through the hardest times. If I didn't, who would? So I didn't really feel like I had an option other than to be strong. So carrying everything just becomes normal. You think that is what normality is. You don't even recognize what's not normal anymore. You start to think carrying the burdens of others, the responsibilities that weren't yours to carry, is normal. You repress yourself from having any sort of expression that doesn't fit the box that's been assigned to you, the character that's been labeled for you, the good girl, the golden child, the one who listens. If it doesn't fit that, then you don't have a route to expression outside of it. So implosion isn't necessarily something you'll see happening in front of you to someone and recognize that something is wrong, or even for yourself. Implosion isn't falling apart. It's running out of space to put the things that you've been carrying for so long. One of the reasons why I've been thinking about expression and what happens when we don't have a place for it to go is because of my mom. My mum, she's a poet, and no, unfortunately, we're not rich. We didn't get anything out of that. But she is well known in the Pakistani community. She writes articles, essays, poetry around conventional and unconventional topics. She writes more so around women's rights, women's roles in society, women standing up for themselves, taboo topics like divorce in the South Asian community. And poetry has always been her route to expression since she was a teenager. But I honestly used to think my mum was the biggest hypocrite. Sorry, mum. On paper, she would write all these beautiful things about women standing up for themselves, breaking the chains that are holding them down, following what they believed was the right thing to do. But in reality, she wouldn't apply any of it to herself or her environment. I watched her succumb to what her family wanted of her. As a divorcee with children, she was left to fend for herself. I watched family minimize her as an individual, minimize her character, and she would just take it. She would still offer her support and help to the very people that treated her that way. I couldn't understand why someone who writes so beautifully about women finding themselves, fighting for their rights, writing their own story, their own version in society, couldn't apply it to her own life. I genuinely believe that she was such a hypocrite because I couldn't understand how those two versions of her could exist at the same time. For years, I thought expression only mattered if there was an action to back it up. So if somebody sees a problem, they will automatically change it. If there's something wrong in their environment, they'll automatically act to make it different. If somebody sees an issue with their family system, they will automatically try and address the issues in their family system. But life is not as simple as that. I understand that now, having gone through experiences into my adulthood and realizing that sometimes women don't have certain means to allow them to be able to do anything but express themselves, to allow them to be able to even have an action to any of the things that they are expressing. Some women do not have the financial freedom. Some women do not have the mental, the emotional, the physical freedoms to be able to act on the expressions that they have, the thoughts that they have. And especially for a lot of South Asian girls, we have grown up seeing how women will think of the repercussions before the expression itself. Things like the moment they express themselves, what will the response be? What will people think of them? How comfortable or uncomfortable does it make other people? Is it accepted by other people? How will they be appeasing them through their expression? Those are the considerations a lot of South Asian women have before they even think about expressing themselves. And that's if they even choose to express themselves at all. Because there are huge elements tied to it that have been ingrained in our minds from a very, very young age. Respect, shame, honor, judgment of our family, to the point where this becomes associated with someone's expression. It becomes really difficult to be able to say what you actually want to say. You're constantly trying to make sure that any expression that you have stays within the confines of shame, honor, respect, judgment. And after doing that for many years, you naturally just stop expressing yourself. You filter yourself, you wear a mask around even your own family. So what route do you then take to have expression? For my mum, since she was a teenager, poetry became that route where she could safely express what she actually thought and believed, to allow her thoughts to go somewhere, whether there was an action backing it up or not. Honestly, I think previous generations had to become really creative in how they were able to express themselves without the fear of there being repercussion. And a lot of the time that was through creative means. Unlike today, where I feel like we have a lot more platforms and accessibility to be able to express ourselves in ways that doesn't entirely hinder our practical lives, or people around us are not necessarily aware of our expressions, such as social media. There wasn't an online community for the generations before us. There weren't like-minded people who were expressing what they were going through and you could really resonate with them and feel like you weren't alone. They didn't have thousands of people openly talking about trauma and their lived experiences and the struggles that they had. They didn't have people showing them that it was okay to be able to express themselves, that it was okay, that they weren't wrong in having these thoughts and these desires, and that their expressions were entirely valid. It's just that they were confined into a way of being and thinking because of the environment and the people around them. So just because someone isn't acting on behalf of an expression doesn't necessarily mean that the expression itself is not the action. For a lot of people, just expressing themselves at some point was the hardest thing and is the act in itself. Sometimes that's the only route someone has to be able to exist, even if it's within themselves and their own mind. But what happens when you've lived in a situation for so long that you're just so fearful of expressing yourself, that you feel like there is no root at all, that even your expression, because it can be an act against the environment you're in, act as if it's a defiance of some sort, or even a defiance to yourself, the way that your mind has now evolved to accept certain things, to accept that you should stay within certain confines. How do you then be able to express yourself when there is no route for you, when you can't see a way out for yourself to do that? What happens when all your feelings and thoughts have nowhere to go at all? I honestly didn't think I would get to a point where I'd be reading about chronic stress, trauma, emotional suppression, childhood wounds, and how they fester into adulthood, and wonder whether I'd become one of the statistics in the books that I was reading. I've been reading and watching Gabor Mate for quite a while now, in particular, focusing on how culture impacts women in the sense of autoimmune diseases, and how it's highly prevalent in women, not because of gender differences, but because of how culture is impacting their nature and resulting to implications such as autoimmune diseases. So how women will go out of their way to please other people, how they will go out of their way to make sure everyone else is comfortable over their own comfort, over their own boundaries, and how they will choose to continue to suppress themselves rather than express what they are going through, what they want, what they need. Especially within the South Asian community, we've seen firsthand how a lot of women around us are suffering in silence, how they choose to keep the respect, the so-called honor, the so-called judgment at bay, then actually talk about the issues that they are facing. And as a result of that, a lot of them have ended up suffering, whether it's through physical labor that's been put on them, or whether it's through mental health because of the emotional and the mental burden on them, or whether it's through them just choosing to not express themselves and what they actually can do out of the fear of repercussion. Every time I've looked at family members growing up and even into adulthood, I would get really mad. I would always question, why are you not sticking up for yourself? Why are you allowing these things to happen to you? Why aren't you doing anything? To the point where when it was happening to me, I didn't realize that it was happening. I also went through the exact same thing. And it was only in hindsight that I noticed and I realized that I didn't stand up for myself, that I allowed certain things to happen to me because I felt like keeping the peace and preventing conflict was greater and more important than me being able to express what I wanted to say and what I thought was right versus wrong for me. And for the longest time, I didn't understand the barriers people were facing. Not everyone has the courage to express themselves. Not everyone has the space to do it. Not everyone has the platform to be able to express themselves without there being severe repercussions and consequences. The South Asian community is one of the biggest examples of that. The moment a South Asian woman says something that doesn't align with what our community expects of her, people are often quicker in questioning who she is as a person and her character than to actually engage with what she's actually saying. They deflect to her as an individual to be able to destroy her image and who she is rather than really go into the detail of what she is trying to say and engage with that. So I really do understand why previous generations had so many barriers that they accepted because there were repercussions and consequences for them saying anything like we do now. Even today, we have so many platforms now and so many spaces for women to go and express themselves. But even that, there are still repercussions attached to it. So the question becomes, what happens when you continue to suppress yourself out of the fear of repercussion? The emotions that you are suppressing, the thoughts, the feelings, they don't just disappear. They fester and they come back in other ways into your life. They come back through burnout, through illnesses, through your health declining, through mental instability, and they come back in your behavior. You start to feel resentment. You start to feel discontentment with your life. You start to feel this bitterness with how your life has ended up. And if you happen to have children in the process, they also fall out onto your children, onto the experiences that they have and the things that they see through you. The impact of not speaking up and saying what you actually feel, want, need, is not just the fear of having an illness later down the road. It's living a life where your body is carrying what you were unable to say or express and voice in different forms and ways that are unpredictable. You don't know what the consequences of this will be much later in your life. For me, I think the implications of not saying what was actually happening to me and what I was going through started so early on. I remember having gut issues from the moment I was 6 years old. I used to call myself a walking zombie because I would be ill all the time. Into my teenage years, even into my adulthood, I would just be ill all the time and I couldn't explain why. Looking back now, I can't help but wonder how much of my body was carrying the things I was unable to express. I'm not claiming that suppression is the cause of all illnesses, but I think we've all seen it in our households, especially as South Asian girls. On either side, there is a cost. Which one do you think is greater is the thing that we have to decide. The expression that you have, it may end up having repercussions from the South Asian community, or it may end up having repercussions on your body, on your mental health, on your physical health, or even result in you just never being able to see your authentic self, never being able to be the person you could have been, you should have been, if you were allowed to express yourself the way you wanted. Which brings me to why social media. I haven't posted anything on social media properly, like to a bunch of followers and stuff, even privately, other than a few TikToks. The biggest one I posted in the past was on Instagram. When I first ever used Instagram over 10 years ago, I was quite late to the bandwagon. I wasn't really a social media person, but I thought one summer during my university year that, I'm going to try and use Instagram. And I ended up posting a picture of my ensuite toilet in my accommodation, literally just a picture of the shower and the toilet next to it on my Instagram, because to me, honestly, that was the coolest thing ever. I already had IBS, had so many issues, and I was sharing with all of my family this one toilet, and now I finally had my own toilet. So I was so excited about it, and I posted it on my Instagram because I just assumed that's what social media is for. You just post the things that resonate with you in the hopes that they resonate with other people as well. And bless the followers, the friends I had on my private Instagram who actually liked the photo, because now I'm looking back, I'm thinking, what was I doing? I just honestly saw social media that way. I saw it as a non-performative thing where you just express the things that are real in your life. And I still believe that holds true. I see a lot of creators in the South Asian community talk about the experiences that they're going through. They share what's happened to them. They share their traumas. They share the kind of things that they had to do to overcome them. And that really does genuinely help a lot of women who are probably isolated from society because they're living in this environment that dictates everything around them. They're probably isolated in their own minds because they have to be this version that people have set out for them, and make them feel like they are less crazy when they have these thoughts and these desires and these ideas to do something and be something, and not feel like they have to be confined to what is labeled for them, to what is expected of them. However, at the same time, I do feel like social media has become quite performative. It is all about getting that attention, getting that engagement, that you kind of lose the authenticity around the things some people are saying and they want to get through to others. It makes it really difficult to know what's real and what's not real for a lot of the things that you're watching. I know I don't really have the confidence to apply a lot of the things that I am thinking right now and wanting right now into my real life. And it felt like social media was the place I could go to be able to articulate and openly, without fear, discuss the things that I'm thinking and wanting and the experiences I've lived through, in the hopes that they may resonate with other people, in the hopes that I can then apply this version of me to my real life. And there is a side of myself I want to conquer, the side of myself that is so relentlessly stuck on seeking other people's validation and not seeing value in myself unless it's through someone else's lens. Because when I see other women around me who have grown up having a support system, grown up being able to express their needs, express what they want, express what they feel and think, I'm so envious sometimes, and I wonder who I could have been if I was given that opportunity. Because being my authentic self should matter to me more than anything else, because I live in here. This is where we all live, in our heads. And right now, my head is not the best place. I'm in conflict within myself. I want to say something, I want to do something, I want to live in a way that is catered to me, but then I just struggle to make that decision and to make that choice for myself, because I'm so addicted to making sure I am not disappointing anyone, that I am appeasing everyone, that my worth is so tied to what people think of me that I feel so worthless within myself. But on the other hand, if I don't do this, I will never get to be my authentic self. And I don't want that to be the case. I want to find my authentic self. I want to find my self-worth within me. And even right now, as I'm talking, I'm having this visceral response of sweating, because I'm so scared and I'm so fearful of saying the things I've always wanted to say. But honestly, this fear and this response of sweating is worth it if it means that I get to meet who I am. I'm not sure how many other girls feel this way, but I have two versions of myself. One that is internal and one that is external. I have the perfect persona when I'm around people. I've created it to the perfect extent that you would genuinely think that that's who I am through and through. But I know internally that's not who I am. My internal voice doesn't want to get people's validation. It doesn't want to make the choices and decisions that she's making just to appease other people. It simply wants to say no. It wants to say no to so many things that I decided to say yes to, because I was so concerned about what people would think of me rather than what I thought of myself. I was so concerned on disappointing other people than disappointing myself. I always try to have a smile on my face. I always try to do the best for other people, to the point in which I am depleted of resource, time, and capacity, but I will just do it because my worth is so tied to it. But internally, that's not what I want. Internally, I'm screaming. Like, my stomach is dropping and I'm in pain and I'm screaming to let myself out and just say, no, I don't want any of this. I don't want to try this. I don't want to be this. I just want to be myself, whoever that is. But because I've grown up into adulthood not having any healthy route to expression, I can't even express my fear in a healthy way, my anger in a healthy way. I can't even express what I want and need without being so overwhelmed that I just start to cry. I can't even recognize what my needs are, what my desires are, what are things I actually want for myself, because my whole life has been around catering for other people and looking out for what other people want from me rather than what my body is telling me, rather than what my mind is telling me, rather than the things I would like, the path I would like to go down. That now I can't navigate myself as a person. I struggle so much to do that. Yet if I'm put in an environment, the first thing I'll be able to do so quickly is scan around and look at people and understand what I need to be and how I need to perform, and how perfectly I can create it so that the other person accepts me and validates me and sees me as someone worthy. I've genuinely believed that people care about this so much, that everyone is going through the same thing, that everyone is doing this, that at this point, I'm just so exhausted of carrying all of this on my own. I'm so exhausted of burdening myself with expectations and responsibilities that were never mine to carry. And to any girl out there who thinks carrying everything alone is a reflection of strength because you didn't have anywhere to authentically express yourself, then I'm sorry to say it's not. I was fooled by most of my life into my adulthood. I thought I was strong because I carried all these responsibilities and all these expectations so well at the expense of myself. I thought I was strong because I could uphold this character like no one else could. People who have genuine strength within themselves can be themselves regardless of the people around them, regardless of the situation or the environment they're in. Because carrying things alone and losing yourself in the process is not what strength is. There is no strength in carrying it alone. If any of that felt familiar to you at all, just know that you are not alone. That people in different shapes, experiences, and forms are going through similar things. And I hope we can all navigate it to a point in which we can truly find ourselves in it all. I hope to see you in the next one as I start this journey.